Hi, this is Ru. I hope you enjoy this first video of mine. Um, so, we all love to read romance in books, be it as a main plot or merely as a subplot. Not only do recommendations often focus on this particular aspect of the books, on this genre as a whole, but it is in fact the highest grossing genre in the literary world. A similar kind of focus can be seen in the microtrope found family, as many people also enjoy the grumpy person involuntarily taking care of chaos filled with chaos and finally accepting their love as they grow older or closer, both. Um, as much as I love this genre and tropes, I really do. This video won't focus on the found family trope and rather put the romance aspect in a different perspective. I'm going to talk about another type of love, of family, the love of family you grew up with. Because I'm wondering, why do bonds between family members, be it blood or simply growing up together, get ignored so often for the aspect of romance? The reason I plan to dive a little deeper into this topic is because I recently finished the series The Folk of the Air by Holly Black, and I truly loved it. This was such an amazing read. I wholeheartedly love and recommend it. The world building and the characters were amazing. And as usual in these times, I got this recommendation off of social media, and if you're like me, you spend a little bit of time reading the comments, etc. And had probably also noticed how many people described the first volume of the series, The Cruel Prince, as an enemies to lovers in the recommendations. There are, of course, people telling you this isn't the main plot of the book. Don't get me wrong, I do enjoy a good romance subplot, especially in fantasy, but the focus of this series lays in the schemes and the intrigue of the court, and I loved it. I truly did. But despite all these comments and recommendations, never did anyone even mention the precious relationship between the main character, Jude, and her sisters. How they knew each other seemingly to the core, cared so deeply about each other, looking out for each other each step in the book, even with the occasional scuffle between them. And honestly, after experiencing the developing relationship, it led me to wonder why did this pretty important aspect of their characters just got put aside for the aspect of romance, as if it was nothing of importance. Of course it is. So I am going to talk a bit about it, looking at the dynamic of families, of people in general, and lastly, a couple of reasons that could be due to us, the readers. I'm going to start with the dynamic with families. We're all familiar with the so-called nuclear families, right? I'm still going to define it real quick, okay? A nuclear family usually consists of the parents with their children. None of the extensive families belong to that category. And according to a research paper by Sear, families with the characteristics of being Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic, aka weird, show an extreme case of nuclear families, which seems to be some kind of norm amongst these weird families, as their relatives outside of this nuclear home seem to retain some sort of distant relationship. This may vary, of course, as everything does, especially considering this is such a small group of people. Still, if you consider that most parts of the world try to achieve that status of weird in some way, and colonization and industrialization, Of course, we can assume that this naturally affects the way you see your family, or rather, the future family you desire. Um, a nuclear family of some sort is independent from the rest of the family, right? And if you also consider the way the specific demographic, the weird demographic, has always been the bigger representation in media, it could have also influenced the view of families according to this set standard. Especially if minorities have another perspective on the dynamic of family, but their influence on the media is as good as none. With the way, if there is a representation, the chance of them portraying another type of family dynamic is unlikely. Considering this, one can assume that the portrayal of families has an effect on the people, mainly overlooking platonic relationships as less important than romantic, simply because the subconscious is required to look for the potential of said nuclear family, rather than a different dynamic as one is used to follow the norm, be consciously or not. In connection to this family dynamic, there's the interpersonal relationship between people, which is obviously dependent on who the person on the other side is. There's one theory, the Dubbers, I think it is said, Dubbers, the dyadic power theory, which explains the way dominance is shifting between the people depending on the situation. According to it, people have the liberty, the possibility to be more dominant in a relationship which is built on equal grounds, meaning both parties share the same weight in this interpersonal relationship, in contrast to someone having more power over the other, which is the usual dynamic in a family, as in between a parent and a child. Resulting in a dynamic between parent and child, the child might seek the liberation of relationships both equally, such as platonic or romantic relationships. This leads one to wanting to put some space between oneself and the family, where the power imbalance stems from looking for equal ground, and thus the communication resulting in this equal dynamic. This may seem as some sort of freedom. So it makes sense if, even in fantasy, the reader wants to avoid thinking about this dynamic of losing power. We have to remember, though, that this dynamic may also vary, and the bigger imbalance lay between the parent and the child, while the one between siblings may depend on various other factors, considering there was no correlation between different pairs of siblings found for whatever imbalance may occur, even if siblings may be closer to maintain an equal grounds with each other than the other relationships in the family. Now, I broached the topic of what the reader may want to read while reading the book. And an important aspect for the enjoyment of reading is the character development, or rather the development of interpersonal relationship between the characters. If we take the dynamic mentioned before into consideration, one might think it makes sense for the reader to rather focus on the romance aspect, as these characters are communicating and trying their best to stay on equal ground with the dynamic. This leads to the development as the relationship is starting practically in front of our eyes as you start the book, opposed to the familial relationship where the reader starts with the book and the relationship already exists and is established. Thus, the reader has no other choice but to take this relationship as it is. They might even think their family, the dynamics already there, what else could happen? This familial bond had existed for the lifetime of this character, and unless some kind of catastrophe happened, there won't be any real change. it just doesn't interest me as much as the new, exciting development happening. In contrast, the romantic aspect which often starts in the book, can be truly and fully experienced with the maximum development possible. So why settle for the same rhythm of the family? It is very fair to think like that. But I think, personally, it's important to remember that these families do give the characters a lot of depth, and many hint at some explanation of the exhibited behavior, be it learned or expected. There may not be any experience development in the book, but any relationship can add dynamic and character to a character, and you can see how they interact with people close to them in varying degrees. And let's be honest, every interpersonal relationship can suddenly change and be exciting no matter what. Now, let's see. Again, the perspective and want of the reader matters, as most of the readers desire most of the time to finish the book with the so-called happy ever after. This little thing is famously known to be used in fairy tales, even if the historic sources often don't mention these at all. The happy ever after, as simple as its name conveys, a happy end, one where everyone gets to live the rest of their life in peace and joy. Readers love them. We do. They desire them. And for many reasons, one could be the connection to the character development, or the development between characters. Again, as the characters have gone through all possible hardships to land where they are, and they finally deserve some rest and peace. On the other hand, reading in general is used heavily as some sort of escapism. And let's be real, reading is really a great one to do it. Because it is something you can use to forget the reality you live in for a while, all while knowing that the story between your hands will end well, and you can rest your heart at least for them, if not for yourself. The happy end usually makes the reader equally happy as the story ends in some sort of catharsis, or even entertaining the thoughts, oh, maybe there is a happy ending possible for me too. And again, with romances, these kind of relationships start in a book, and a happy ending means that true love does exist. And maybe anyone can find it, because the story hasn't, my own story, your story hasn't really begun yet, has it? Contrary to that, a happy ending with family would look entirely different. And as everyone has their parents set for life, it can be difficult to imagine or entertain the thought of some sort of satisfying catharsis. All things considering, we can assume that their behavior towards family members in books, as in being disregarded and not mentioned at all, could possibly stem from the way our society is built and developed. The way families are formed and how they're being represented plays a role in our mind, in addition to our experience in life with different kinds of relationship and their respective dynamic. In the end, the probably heaviest explanation from this behavior are the expectations of the reader, what they want to see and experience in proxy. Additionally, the author is practically a reader too, as they kind of fulfill their own thoughts in this. With that, there are quite some explanations to this phenomena, and I hope it was interesting to know, because it was interesting for me to research and to look for you. Thank you for listening to me. I hope you have a nice day. Bye!